Amelia froze. Her brown eyes, those eyes, widened, reflecting more than just surprise. There was fear, pain, and something he hadn't expected: shame. Welcome to the channel Love Above All, Passion and Power Stories. Before we dive into this story, I want to propose a little challenge. If you enjoy the first few minutes, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Abandoned and without hope, Amelia finds in Richard not just a helping hand, but a new chance to rewrite her story. Get ready to be moved by a tale of resilience, love, and a future reborn where it's least expected. Are you ready to begin? Then let's go. The rain fell lightly over Manhattan's wet sidewalks, painting the city's lights in melancholic shades of neon and nostalgia. Richard Miller wasn't the type to linger at red lights for more than 3 seconds. His life was built on urgency, quick and cold decisions. But that evening, something made him slam the brakes harder than necessary. Something that froze his chest completely. A woman's silhouette, hunched over 2 small figures in torn coats, sat against the wall of a closed restaurant. A dirty piece of cardboard served as their bed, and the children, twins maybe 4 or 5 years old, shivered in the woman's arms. Her brown hair was tied in a messy bun, her face hidden under the shadow of a hood. But Richard knew. He knew the moment her eyes lifted to meet his. Amelia. The name cut through his throat like a hot blade. He opened the car door without thinking. His Italian leather shoes splashed against the wet sidewalk, ignoring his driver's protests. "Amelia?" His voice came out deep, restrained, as if saying her name could break something. The woman froze. Her brown eyes, those eyes, widened, showing more than just surprise. There was fear, pain, and something else he hadn't expected. Shame. "Richard," she whispered, her voice hoarse and low. The children clung to her as if sensing the shift in the air. "What are you doing here?" He looked at her for a few seconds that felt like hours. Raindrops slid down his forehead, but he didn't feel cold. He felt something else. A helpless kind of anger at seeing the woman he had once loved with everything he had, thrown onto the streets like a ghost from the past. "That should be my question," he said, stepping closer. "My God, Amelia, what happened to you?" She shrank back, not from fear, but from pride. From being seen like this. From remembering the taste of his kiss, and now tasting only dust and humiliation. "You wouldn't understand," she said, her eyes welling with tears, "and I won't beg for mercy." "It's not mercy, Amelia," he said firmly. "It's humanity. And it's—" He hesitated, letting slip a feeling he didn't want to name. "It's you." A sudden noise made the twins flinch. One of them coughed, the other stared at Richard with wide, questioning eyes. Something broke inside him. "Are they—" "My daughters," she said, swallowing hard. "Twins. They're 5 years old." Richard felt the world tilt. He did the math instantly, like he always did in business. 5 years, right after high school. But no, it couldn't be. "Are they mine?" "No." Her answer was quick, firm, almost like a shield. "They're Eric Jones's daughters." That name. Richard clenched his fists. Eric, the popular kid, the jerk who always had everything handed to him, including Amelia for a brief time. Richard said nothing. He just breathed deeply, trying to keep control. "Do you have a place to stay tonight?" he asked. Amelia hesitated. For a moment, it looked like she might lie, but exhaustion won. "No, but I've been through worse." Richard crouched down in front of her, not caring that his expensive suit was getting drenched. "You won't go through worse anymore. Grab your things, Amelia. You 3 are coming with me." She shook her head. "Richard, I can't accept this. Not like this. Not from you." He stared at her, and there was something in his eyes that made the whole world disappear. The sound of the city, the headlights, even the rain, all fell silent. You will accept it, because I could never forgive myself if I turn my back on you now, because you need me and I'm here, and because I still care, Amelia, much more than I should." She looked at him like someone standing at the edge of an emotional abyss. Tears slid silently down her soot-streaked, nostalgic face. And then, without another word, she nodded. Richard rose, offered his hand to help her up with the girls, and felt her touch, fragile, hesitant, yet achingly familiar. The past pulsed between their fingers. As she stood, one of her daughters fainted in her arms. Richard caught her before she hit the ground, heart pounding. "Never again," he murmured, holding the little girl tight against his chest. "I'll never let you fall again." Richard walked with long, determined strides into the grand lobby of his Upper East Side mansion, carrying the unconscious little girl wrapped in his overcoat. Amelia followed closely behind, clutching the other child tightly to her neck, her eyes wide at the splendor around her: oriental rugs, polished marble floors, a chandelier that seemed suspended in time. But none of that mattered to her now. All she could think about was two things: her daughter, still weak in Richard's arms, and the sound of her own past echoing through each step she took inside that house. "Evelyn will be fine," he said, sensing Amelia's anxious gaze. "I've already called the doctor. She'll be here in minutes." Richard climbed the stairs with the child cradled in his arms, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, as if protecting an innocent life mattered more than any business meeting or bank account balance. Amelia stood frozen at the foot of the staircase, her heart pounding against her ribs. Her soaked shoes were ruining the expensive carpet. Her younger daughter, Anna, snuggled in her arms, her eyes drooping from exhaustion. "Mrs. Miller?" a soft voice spoke beside her. It was Lucy, the housekeeper, a kind-faced woman in her 50s. "Come with me. I'll get you a hot bath and something to eat. You're safe here." Safe. That word echoed inside Amelia like a forbidden whisper. She followed Lucy through a wide hallway, lined with artwork and immaculate furniture, into a cozy bedroom prepared just for them. 2 little beds, a bathtub already filling with warm water, butterfly and flower wallpaper, lavender-scented linens. "This is too much," Amelia whispered, still not sure if she was dreaming. "Mr. Miller had this room set up just a few minutes ago. He cares a lot." Amelia didn't respond. She simply brushed her daughter's hair back gently as she helped her out of her wet coat. Meanwhile, upstairs, Richard watched over Evelyn, now resting in a guest bed, covered in warm blankets while the private doctor checked her vitals. The diagnosis was clear: mild malnutrition, extreme fatigue, a weakened immune system. "She'll recover," the doctor said softly, "but she'll need food, warmth, and time." Richard nodded, his jaw clenched tight. He had never felt so much contained rage, not at Amelia, but at the world that had let her fall so far, at Eric Jones, at himself. He stayed by Evelyn's side until she stirred and opened her eyes, weak but alive. When he finally came downstairs again, he found Amelia sitting on the library couch, now in clean clothes, her hair still damp and loose. A forgotten cup of tea rested in her hands. She looked up at him, and for a moment it was like stepping back in time. The same eyes from when she was 18, full of dreams. But now there were cracks, deep wounds, stories he didn't know yet. "Evelyn's sleeping," he said gently. "She's going to be okay." Amelia nodded, clutching the cup tighter. "You didn't have to do all this, Richard." "I did." Silence. "When I saw you there..." He sat across from her, locking eyes. "It felt like time was punishing me for never going after you." She bit her lip, tears welling but refusing to fall. "You moved on. I couldn't." "That's not moving on, Amelia. That's surviving. And you did it. Alone. With 2 daughters." He leaned closer. But you're not alone anymore. Those words hit her harder than she wanted to admit. She looked away, hiding the storm inside her. I don't want charity, Richard. And I'm not offering charity. I'm offering presence, support, a home if you'll have it, not out of pity, but because you mean something to me. You always have. She inhaled deeply, staring at his hands, the same hands that once held hers under the high school stars, the same hands now holding her entire world without her even asking. I don't know what to do with all of this, she confessed. I'm too tired to even dream. He stood up and reached out his hand again, just like he had in the rain. Then rest first. Dreaming can come later. When she took his hand, something passed between them. It wasn't just gratitude, it wasn't just memories, it was desire, contained and suffocated. And Richard knew, in that instant, that their story was only just beginning. The next morning arrived quietly, filtered through the light curtains of the bedroom where Amelia woke without fear for the first time in years. The sunlight poured in gently, illuminating the high ceiling with its white moldings and golden details. Beside her, the twins slept soundly, curled up together, their little faces serene. That alone was worth everything. But along with the peace came the weight of reality. She got up slowly, slipped into one of the comfortable outfits Lucy had left, and went downstairs to the kitchen. She found Richard there, leaning over a cup of coffee and a few papers. He was wearing a white shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms, his tie hanging loosely around his neck. For a second, Amelia caught herself staring at the curve of his jawline, at the elegant seriousness of a man who carried the world on his shoulders, but who, just last night, had carried her daughters in his arms. "Good morning," she said softly. Richard looked up, and a small smile broke through the stiffness of his face. Almost imperceptible, but there it was, a gesture meant only for her. "Good morning, did you sleep well?" She nodded. For the first time in weeks. He pulled out a chair for her and offered a plate with fresh fruit and warm bread. Amelia hesitated but sat down. The smell of coffee, the warmth of the kitchen, the distant sound of the twins playing with Lucy. It all felt surreal, as if she were living someone else's life, a life that had never been meant for her. "Evelyn," she started. "She's already awake," he said, taking a sip of coffee. "I asked the doctor to come back later today, just to check on her." "Thank you, Richard." She pressed her fingers together nervously. "For everything." He leaned forward slightly. "Amelia, I want to understand. I want to know how you ended up here, not out of curiosity, but because if you're staying, and I hope you are, I want to know you again, your whole story, no masks." She looked away. Shame burned at the back of her throat. But there was something about the way Richard looked at her. No judgment, just presence. She took a deep breath. "After high school, everything changed fast. My parents moved to another city. I stayed behind, trying to study and work. That's when I got involved with Eric. It was quick, intense, but empty. And when I found out I was pregnant, he was already gone. Said it wasn't his problem." Richard clenched his fists under the table. The name Eric Jones stirred something primal inside him. "And your family?" "They turned their backs on me, called me a disappointment. I tried to do it all on my own, Richard. I worked in diners, sold jewelry on the street, slept in shelters. For a while I managed, but when the girls got sick and I had to miss work, I lost everything. I got evicted, and from there, the fall was fast." Her words fell like stones between them. Richard closed his eyes for a moment, as if he could feel the full weight of her pain. "You never came to me." She swallowed hard. "I thought you had forgotten me, that your life had moved on, and I didn't want to show up like just another tragedy for you to fix." "You're not a tragedy, Amelia," he said, his voice low and intense. "You're a woman who survived everything, on your own, and you don't have to do it alone anymore." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She had cried enough. Now she needed to be strong. "I'm still scared," she confessed. "Scared to trust, scared to let go, even scared to smile. It feels like if I let my guard down, everything will fall apart again." "Then we'll go slow," he said, "but we'll go together." Silence. A silence full of things left unsaid, of promises waiting in the air. Richard stood up and crossed the kitchen, picking up an envelope from the counter. "I was thinking," he said, coming back to her, "you've always been smart, creative, and determined. If you want, I could help you go back to school. Entrepreneurship, business management, whatever you choose." Amelia looked at him, surprised. "School? It's not charity. It's an investment. In you. You have potential. Much more than you realize." She hesitated, her heart torn between fear and hope. But when she looked at him, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Someone who believed in her. Amelia took the envelope slowly, as if holding a new chance in her hands, and for the first time in a long time she thought, "Maybe I can dream again." The next day, the sun flooded Manhattan's sky with rare generosity. It was as if even the weather conspired to change Amelia's life. She woke up to the sound of her daughter's laughter echoing down the hall, and for a moment she didn't recognize her own reality. No sirens, no biting cold, no overwhelming uncertainty, just the softness of a home that wasn't hers, but could be. "If you want to get out for a bit with them, I thought we could take a walk," Richard said later, leaning casually against her bedroom doorframe, his sleeves rolled up, his gaze calm. "A light morning, maybe some shopping, lunch out. They deserve it. And so do you." Amelia almost refused. Old instincts told her to protect herself from kindness. But when she saw her daughters dressed in new clothes, smiling and playing with newly discovered dolls around Lucy, she realized she needed it too. She needed to breathe, to live, even if just for a day. "All right," she said with a shy smile. "But no extravagance." Richard simply smiled, a subtle smile, but full of silent intentions. The store was on Fifth Avenue, the kind of place Amelia would have never imagined setting foot in. Soft carpets, elegant saleswomen, perfumed air conditioning, and shelves lined with educational toys and children's clothes, so neatly arranged they looked like museum pieces. The twins ran off toward a corner filled with colorful dresses, their eyes shining as if they had stepped into a fairy tale. "They've never been somewhere like this," Amelia murmured, embarrassed, crossing her arms as if trying to disappear. "They shouldn't have had to wait this long," Richard said in a low voice. "Neither should you." He walked beside her naturally, as if they belonged together in that space. As if they were a couple. Richard noticed everything. The way Amelia protected the girls, how she gently corrected them, how she looked at the price tags with a mix of wonder and guilt. He didn't comment, but he noticed. "Did you know Anna loves blue and Evelyn loves yellow?" he said as they picked out dresses. "I just found out," she replied. "It's hard to notice little things like that when your only concern is surviving another day." Richard gently picked up one of the yellow dresses and quietly moved closer to her. "From now on, you'll have time to notice everything, even the things that make your own eyes shine again." She looked at him, surprised by the unexpected sweetness. Her heart beat faster, confused. Was it affection, interest, or just compassion? And why, even if it was only compassion, did it make her chest ache like that? After shopping, they had lunch at a discreet Italian restaurant overlooking Central Park. The girls devoured their pasta like they were attending a royal banquet. Amelia, despite trying to stay composed, laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in a very long time. She laughed when Evelyn spilled sauce on her shirt, laughed when Anna tried to speak Italian to the waiter, and Richard laughed with her. Or maybe for her. On the drive home, as the girls slept in the back seat, Amelia and Richard fell into silence. But it was a comfortable silence, almost intimate. "You seem like a different person when you smile," he said, not looking directly at her. "I feel like a different person," she replied, gazing out the window. "And it scares me." "Why?" "Because it's easy to get lost in this illusion, to believe everything can go back to the way it was, to believe that someone like you could come back into my life and not destroy it, even by accident." Richard turned to her, his eyes intense but calm. "I'm not here to destroy you, Amelia. I'm here to remind you that there's still something good inside you, that you still deserve happiness, with or without me." His words hung in the air like a veil of hope. Amelia looked at him again, her eyes filled with tears, but steady. And in that moment, there was no millionaire and no lost woman. There were only two souls trying to find their way back to each other. When they arrived at the mansion, one of the girls woke up drowsy and asked, "Mommy, is he our daddy?" Amelia froze. Richard did too, and for the first time, the silence between them became an answer neither of them knew how to interpret. The little girl's question echoed through the house like a silent bomb. "Mommy, is he our daddy?" Amelia froze. Richard, sitting up front, remained completely still, his hand resting on the seat. The silence that followed was more eloquent than any answer. It was the kind of question that came straight from a child's pure heart and cut with the precision of a sharpened knife. "No, sweetheart," Amelia finally said, her voice soft, "but he's our friend, a very special friend." Anna simply yawned and snuggled back into her sister's arms, as if that answer was enough. For now. But for Amelia, it wasn't. And for Richard, even less so. Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep, Richard found Amelia standing on the balcony. The city buzzed in the distance, full of lights and sounds, yet there the world seemed suspended. "You don't have to explain," he said softly. "I know that question shook you." "It did because I saw hope in her eyes. A hope I don't have any more." He looked at her, his gaze intense. "Maybe it's time to get it back." She smiled, a sad, broken smile. "I don't even know where to start." Then he handed her a small folded brochure. On the cover it read, "Women's Entrepreneurship Program, online course, full scholarship." "Start here," he said. "I already enrolled you. You just have to accept." Amelia took the paper like she was holding a mirror, a reflection of who she could become if given another chance. "Richard," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "why are you doing this? Why do you believe in me so much?" He stepped closer, and when he spoke, his voice was low but certain. "Because I knew you before all of this, Amelia. Before the pain, before the struggle. I saw who you were, and I see now who you still are. I'm not giving you a chance. I'm reminding you that it's always been yours." She lowered her gaze, her eyes brimming with tears. But this time, the tears didn't come from pain. They came from something far harder to bear, the real possibility of being happy. The following days passed like the arrival of a new season. Amelia began the course hesitantly, uncertain as she navigated the online platform, the video lessons, the terminology that sounded distant, like a forgotten language. But little by little, she adapted. The twins watched her study with fascination. And Richard watched her with silent pride. Every night he would appear in the makeshift office he had set up for her in the library. He would leave a cup of tea, a kind comment, sometimes a discreet compliment, and he would stay for a few minutes, quietly listening as she talked about what she was learning. Did you know that 80% of new businesses started by women fail due to lack of technical support? She said one night, her eyes sparkling. That's why you'll have full support, he replied, crossing his arms and leaning against the doorframe, and you're not going to be another statistic. She smiled, her cheeks blushing. It was more than encouragement. It was a kind of faith she had never known before. I still make mistakes, she confessed. Today, I accidentally deleted an entire file. I make mistakes too, he said with a half smile. Once I closed $1 million deal with the client's name spelled wrong. Luckily, he spelled it wrong on his own business card too. She laughed. And for a moment, it didn't feel like patron and protege. It felt like two adults with different scars, healing side by side. One afternoon, Amelia entered Richard's office, her eyes shining. Remember my idea about a sustainable toy store made by single mums? I remember. You haven't stopped talking about it. The course is asking us to submit a final project, and I want to make it real. A real company. It can start small, but... Richard stood up, locking his gaze on hers. Then let's make it happen, now. She blinked, surprised. Richard, it's just a class project. Not to me. If you believe in it, then I believe in it too. And I can help you bring it to life. And if it fails, then we learn, and we try again. Amelia looked at him as if she could see the future materializing right before her eyes. But somewhere deep in her chest, a question still lingered. Can I trust the man who once left me behind? It was strange, Amelia thought, as she rode the mirrored elevator up to Miller Holdings, how life could change so quickly. Just a few months ago, she'd been hiding from the rain under cardboard boxes. Now, she wore a new blazer, clutched a folder with her first project sketches, and was about to work alongside the man she had once loved, and who, in some quiet way, seemed to be finding his way back to her. Richard was waiting for her in the executive lobby, perfect suit, calm expression, but there was a different light in his eyes. He wasn't the ruthless CEO the newspapers described. Standing there, he was the man who held the twins' hands to cross the street, the man who made tea at night, the man who believed in her future when she no longer could. "Ready for your first official meeting?" he asked, extending his hand. "I'm pretending I am," she replied, taking his hand and feeling a strange warmth shoot through her skin. "I just hope this works." "It will," he assured her, "because it's your project, and because you have something no one else here has: courage." The position Richard had created for Amelia was hybrid. It involved market research, social project development, and, slowly, building the sustainable toy store plan. But he also thought of everything to make her new routine possible: flexible hours, a kid's space on the lower floor, and Lucy as constant support. The team welcomed her with polite curiosity. It was impossible to ignore the exchanged smiles, the disguised whispers in the hallways. Everyone wondered who this simple woman was, the one who had gained so much ground so quickly, and who spoke to Richard Miller as if she had known him for years. But Amelia didn't let it get to her. She walked with quiet elegance, learned quickly, listened more than she spoke, and little by little she earned their respect, with ideas, with presence, with authenticity. One afternoon, after leaving a meeting, Richard pulled her aside. "You impressed everyone today," he said, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. "Even the innovation director praised you." "I just spoke from experience. You can't get more real than that." He looked at her with something that mixed admiration and restrained desire. "You have a strength that most people don't see. But I see it, Amelia. I always have." She looked away, feeling her cheeks flush. He still had that power, disarming her with just words. But the lightness of the following days was broken by a name too old to be ignored: Eric Jones. It started with a phone call, an unknown number. Amelia answered and immediately recognized the voice, arrogant, careless, almost mocking. "Well, well, if it isn't Mother of the Year, thought you'd fallen off the map. What do you want, Eric?" "Just curious. Heard you're hanging out with some Richard Miller now. Nice move, Amelia. Congrats. If there's a spot open for me too, let me know." She hung up before he could finish. Her hands were trembling, her stomach churned. The past was dragging her back with brutal force. When she told Richard, he listened in silence, his eyes narrowing with every word. "He has no right to contact you," he said, voice tight with anger, "much less mock everything you've worked so hard to rebuild. He doesn't care. He never did. Not about me, not about the girls. I want to talk to him. Richard, no. Amelia," his voice dropped into an intense whisper, "I promised no one would hurt you again, and I keep my promises." 2 days later, Richard left the office late in the afternoon without giving many details. He simply said he needed to take care of something personal. What Amelia didn't know was that he was going to meet Eric, a direct meeting at a dingy cafe in Queens, where Eric showed up wearing sunglasses and carrying the same arrogant air of someone who had never grown up. "Richard Miller, street hero, you here to lecture me?" "No, I'm here to give you a warning." Richard sat down firmly, staring him down like someone facing a real enemy. "Amelia is rebuilding her life, and you, Eric, have no place in it. You never really did, to be honest. But now it's final. Forget any idea of getting close, mocking, or trying to take advantage." Eric let out a dry laugh. "What, you gonna hit me?" "No, I just make promises, and I keep every single one. And I promised her she'd never suffer alone again. You can laugh at whatever you want, Eric, but you'll never laugh at her pain again." When Richard returned that night, Amelia was in the library studying. He just entered, looked into her eyes and said, "He won't bother you anymore." And in that moment she knew. She was being protected by a man who didn't just say he cared. He proved it. Amelia didn't ask what Richard had done exactly with Eric. She didn't need to. The way he walked into the library, calm, firm, his eyes clearer than ever, said everything. She simply nodded, and he knew she understood. More than that, she trusted him. From then on, something shifted between them. Their conversations grew longer, more personal. Amelia started sharing childhood memories, what she used to love cooking with her mother before everything fell apart. Richard talked about his rebellious teenage years, how he used to wear the wrong tie on purpose just to annoy his father. And slowly, his presence became part of their little routines. He would show up to help with the girls' homework, tell bedtime stories, sometimes watch a movie with them curled up under a blanket on the sofa. Amelia would watch from a distance. Richard with the twins was dangerous, not in a literal sense, but emotionally. He was protective without being overbearing. He played, he listened, he made the girls laugh until they hiccuped. It was as if he had been born for it, and that terrified her more than anything else. One night, after putting the girls to bed, Amelia and Richard met in the mansion's garden. The night was cold but clear. The trees around them swayed lightly in the wind. The city, in the distance, was just a whisper. "They adore you," she said, hugging her arms around herself. "I adore them too," he replied, stepping closer. "They're incredible, strong, like you." "I'm not that strong, Richard. Don't say that. I'm scared all the time, scared to trust, scared that all this will end, scared of caring too much." He looked at her, his face just inches from hers. Her scent was light, sweet, familiar, the kind of fragrance that didn't come from bottles, but from the skin, from the soul itself. "Are you afraid of me?" The question hung between them, raw, intense. Amelia took a moment to answer. I'm afraid of getting used to you, to this. She gestured around them. And then losing it all again. Richard stepped even closer, as if each step was a silent promise. His eyes flicked down to her lips, then back up. The air between them seemed to vibrate. I'm not that boy anymore, Amelia, and you're not that girl. But if there's one thing I know, it's that what I feel when I'm with you has never changed. She looked at him, trying not to fall into the abyss that was his gaze. But it was too late. She had been falling for days, maybe for years. Richard, tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me none of this means anything to you, and I'll walk away right now. She stayed silent. Her chest rose and fell with force. Her eyes brimmed with unshed tears, because she did feel it, all of it, every moment, every touch, every smile he gave the girls, and it hurt. I can't say that, she whispered. Richard reached out, brushing her face lightly with his fingertips, warm against her cold skin. She closed her eyes. Then don't say anything. And his mouth found hers. It was a slow, deep kiss, filled with memories and silent promises. A kiss of reunion, but also of discovery. Because there, between sighs and hesitant touches, were two new versions of themselves. Older, scarred, real. When they finally pulled apart, her hands were resting against his chest, her eyes still closed. This shouldn't be happening, she whispered. But it is. She opened her eyes and saw a vulnerability in him that he never let anyone else see. What happens now? Now, he said, brushing her lips again with his thumb, we breathe and we let ourselves feel, one step at a time. That night, Amelia went back to her room with her lips still tingling, her heart pounding, and the terrible certainty that if she fell again, it would be much harder to get back up. That night stayed marked on Amelia like an invisible tattoo, not just because of the kiss, but because of what it meant. For the first time in years, she had let someone in, someone who truly knew her, and that terrified her. In the days that followed, she tried to act natural, but it was impossible to ignore the tension between her and Richard. The glances that lingered too long, the brief touches in the office hallways, the knowing smiles exchanged around the girls. They were getting closer, irrevocably, and just when she finally began to allow herself to feel, the threat appeared. One ordinary afternoon, while Amelia was replying to emails at her desk, an envelope with no sender was left for her. Inside, only a single sheet of paper, handwritten in slanted, uneven letters. Be careful who you trust. Not everything is what it seems. He has secrets. She froze. The paper trembled between her fingers. Her blood turned to ice. She felt the weight of the words like an invisible hand tightening around her throat. Her first instinct was to run, then to deny it. But deep down, the fear was old. Richard could be sweet, protective, present, but he was powerful, and Amelia knew well. Power hid things. Hours later, already home, she locked herself in her makeshift office and stared at the letter. She reread it 1,000 times, searching for a clue. But its cruelty lay in its vagueness, just enough to poison everything. When Richard arrived, he found Amelia sitting there, hands clasped tightly, her gaze dark. "Is everything okay?" he asked, immediately alert. "I got this today," she said, handing him the paper. Richard took it, read it in silence. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened. "Where did you find it?" "On my desk, at work." "I'll find out who did this." "Richard," she said, her voice shaky, "tell me, is there something I should know? Something about you, about your past?" He looked at her as if she had just struck a blow, but not with anger, with pain. "Amelia," he began, his voice low and steady. "If I had anything to hide from you, You would have already seen it, because you see me in a way no one else does." She stared at him, trying to decipher whether his words were true or just a well-crafted mask. "It's easy to say that. Words, Richard. Words are easy. Even Eric seemed like a prince at first." Richard stepped closer, the paper crumpled in his hand. He looked deep into her eyes, burning with raw sincerity. "I fired an executive 3 months ago, a man who was embezzling money from one of the foundations I created. When I reported him, he threatened me, said he'd destroy me. Since then, I've received messages like this." Her heart pounded so hard it was deafening. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to drag you into it. Because for once, I wanted to protect you from the ugliness that comes with my world." She took a deep breath. She felt the urge to believe him, but also the old reflex to run. "I want to trust you, Richard. I really do. But life taught me that trusting is the first step toward losing everything." He moved even closer, touched her face gently. "Then test me, question me, challenge me. But don't give up on me out of fear, because I'm here, with you, and I'm not going anywhere." His words hung in the air between them, taut like stretched wires. Amelia nodded slowly, the tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She had no strength left to run, only enough to hope that this time things could be different. That night, Richard helped put the twins to bed. Evelyn asked him to tell a story, and Anna hugged him tight at the end. Amelia watched from the doorway, her chest full and aching all at once. He was part of their lives now, and maybe, just maybe, she was finally ready to admit he was part of hers too. In the middle of the night, she woke up startled by an old nightmare. But this time, when she opened her eyes, she wasn't alone. Richard was there, sitting at the edge of her bed, holding her hand. "I promised I wouldn't let you fall." And he was keeping his promise. She woke again to the soft morning light filtering through the curtains. For a moment, she thought it had all been a dream. Richard's warm presence, the firm grip of his hand as she battled her demons, the deep voice whispering promises no one else had ever dared to make. But he was still there. Asleep in the armchair beside the bed, his body slumped, his jaw resting on his hand, as if, somewhere in the night, exhaustion had finally claimed him. Amelia watched him silently. That, more than any words, was a declaration. Richard Miller, the ruthless business tycoon, was there by her side, wearing an expression of peace on his face, as if this place, this room, this woman, these children, was the only place he had ever truly belonged. The following weeks brought a new and precious rhythm. Amelia threw herself into her studies with fierce discipline. The sustainable toy store project was beginning to take real shape. Interested suppliers, partnerships with artisan mothers, social marketing ideas. And Richard, true to his promise, was more than support. He was part of the process. He reviewed proposals with her, asked challenging questions, praised her ideas, and pushed her toward new ones. But he never took control. Amelia led. He walked beside her like a true partner. At the company, she was starting to earn respect, not just as Richard's protégé, but as a professional in her own right. She knew what she was talking about. She had vision. And above all, she spoke from the heart, and that won over even the most skeptical. Lucy cared for the twins with a near-maternal devotion, but every day Richard made a point to have lunch with them, pick them up from school, tell bedtime stories. He knew what each one liked, knew about Anna's nightmares and Evelyn's habit of sleeping with 2 pillows. Little by little, Amelia saw a scene unfold before her eyes, a scene that once had seemed utterly unreachable. A family. But there was still a silence between her and Richard, an unspoken thing, After the kiss in the garden and the night of the letter, there had been no more kisses, no more touches. They watched each other, respected each other, but they also longed for each other. It was there in every lingering glance, every restrained gesture, every nighttime goodbye at her bedroom door. And it was becoming impossible to ignore. One Saturday afternoon, Richard took Amelia and the girls to the golf course where he usually played with investors. The twins ran across the grass like they were in an enchanted park, and Amelia watched them from under a tree, her face a mixture of joy and disbelief. "I never imagined being here," she said when Richard approached with 2 glasses of juice. "Here? At a golf course?" "No. At peace. With my daughters. With you." He sat down beside her, their knees almost touching. The sun caught in her hair like old gold. Richard looked at her as if he wanted to tuck that moment away, somewhere safe inside himself. "I never imagined it either," he said. "But now, I can't imagine anything else." Silence. The twins shouted from across the field, calling them to watch them run toward the lake. Amelia laughed. "They're happy. And you?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I'm relearning how to be." He took her hand gently without words, just a gesture, and she didn't pull away. "Can I show you a place?" he asked after a moment. That night, he took her to the old school where they had first met. The red brick building looked smaller than in their memories, but the basketball court was still there, and so was the old wooden bench behind the gym. "It was here," he said with a nostalgic smile. "It was on this bench that you once told me you wanted to own your own shop someday. Remember?" She smiled, surprised. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about you." He knelt down, but didn't pull out a ring. Instead, he pulled out a small wooden keychain carved with her initials. The same initials that had once been sketched in the diary she had lost and that he had found. "I can't promise perfection, Amelia, but I can promise presence, partnership, truth, a home. Not just for you, for them too." Tears welled up in her eyes, and her knees nearly gave out. It wasn't a typical proposal. It was a raw, unfiltered offer of love. She took the keychain in her hands and whispered, "I only want one thing, Richard." "What?" "Never leave me alone again." He hugged her tightly and said against her hair, "Never again." Time passed, not in great leaps, but in small gestures. The store project came to life. Amelia opened her shop in a cozy Brooklyn neighborhood, surrounded by mothers, handmade toys, and children's voices echoing between colorful shelves. The shop was called Little Roots, in honor of the twins, and of the new beginning that had been growing inside her ever since she dared to hold Richard's hand. He was there, of course, on opening day, wearing a rolled-up blue shirt, holding balloons, handing out cupcakes to the children with a smile that betrayed every ruthless billionaire headline ever written about him. "Is everything the way you dreamed?" he asked, looking at her like nothing else in the world mattered. "It's even more beautiful," she answered, "because I never imagined that in my dream. You would be there too." That night, back at the mansion, Amelia was tucking the girls into bed when Anna surprised her with another one of those heart-piercing questions. "Mommy, if Richard marries you, does that make him our real dad?" Amelia smiled, adjusting the blanket over her little one. "He already loves you like a dad, sweetheart. That's what matters most." "But do you love him?" The answer caught in her throat. Because it was obvious, because it was terrifying, because it was too deep to fit into tired mother's words in a nursery. Later, when the girls were asleep, Amelia stepped out onto the balcony. The city glittered below, but her eyes searched for a different light. Richard approached from behind, as if he knew she had been waiting for him. And she had. "I was thinking about you," she said, without turning around. "I'm always thinking about you," he replied, coming closer. She turned to him, her eyes full of something that wasn't doubt or fear. It was certainty. "I love you, Richard." He stopped. The world stopped. "Not because of everything you've done, but because of who you are, because of how you look at me, because of how you treat the girls, because you never let me fall, even when I wanted to." He pulled her closer, slowly. There was no rush in their kiss. It was a quiet celebration of everything they had overcome, a silent dance between two souls who finally knew each other's rhythm. Months later, on a golden autumn afternoon, Richard took Amelia and the girls back to the old school. But this time, something was different. There was a small stage set up on the grassy field, some lights strung overhead, a path of white flowers. Lucy stood holding the twins' hands, both girls wearing flowing dresses, and Richard, in a grey suit, stood waiting, his eyes locked on one thing only, Amelia walking toward him. She wore a simple flowing dress, carrying a bouquet of lavender. The breeze played with her hair, but her eyes no longer trembled. In front of their few but precious friends and staff, now family, and she said, "I went from the bottom of the pit to the edge of the impossible. But when you reached out your hand, Richard, I realized love could also be light. It could also be home." And he answered, "I lived surrounded by power, control, and goals, but you taught me the value of vulnerability. You taught me what it means to love without fear." There were no traditional vows, just looks, tears, hands intertwined. And when the twins ran to hug them, shouting, "Mommy, Daddy!" Amelia felt something inside her finally complete itself. It wasn't just the marriage. It was the full circle. The rejected girl, the disbelieved mother, the wounded woman, was now loved, chosen, respected. On the last night of that autumn, already settled into their new home where the four of them now lived together, Amelia sat by the fireplace, writing in her notebook. Richard approached, wrapped his arms around her shoulders and whispered, "What are you writing?" She smiled. "Just 3 words." "Which ones?" She turned the notebook toward him. "I learned to love." Richard hugged her tighter. The twins laughed in the living room next door, and Amelia closed her eyes, knowing that yes, between shadows and promises, she had found the light. And finally, she was home. Thank you for being here and watching my story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more stories like this one. Also, don't forget to leave your like. It really helps our channel grow and reach more people who also love emotional stories like these. The next story is already popping up on your screen, filled with plots, love, and resilience that will move your heart once again. Stay with me and let's embark on this new journey together. See you soon, my dear friends. I'll see you in the next video.